Hello spooky souls, and welcome to my channel, your place for all things creepy and crawly. Today, we're taking a spine-tingling journey through the Sunshine State, exploring the 20 most haunted places in Florida, from the eerie shadows of abandoned hospitals to the ghostly whispers of plantations. Florida's rich history is steeped in mystery and tragedy. As we delve into the heart of the Everglades, uncover the secrets of haunted hotels, and encounter restless spirits, you'll realize that beneath a sunny facade, Florida is a treasure trove of terrifying tales. So grab a flashlight and prepare to be spooked as we count down the 20 most haunted places in Florida. Each location is a portal to another world where the dead refuse to rest in peace. Can you brave the haunted hallways of the old mental hospital? Will you survive the night in the ghost town of Bachta? And what secrets lie hidden in the depths of the swamp? As the shadows grow longer and the spirits come alive, you'll want to keep a close eye on your surroundings. Who knows what ghostly apparitions might cross your path, or what eerie sounds will haunt your dreams long after the tour is over. Are you ready to face your fears and uncover the chilling secrets that await? Let's dive in together. Standing like a pastel dream against the shimmering turquoise waters of Florida's Gulf Coast, the Dome Caesar Hotel rises in soft pink elegance, earning its moniker the Pink Palace. Since 1928, this majestic hotel has lured guests from across the world, offering luxury, old-world charm, and sun-drenched relaxation. But beneath its stunning facade lies something far more mysterious, a presence many say that refuses to leave. Whispers of ghostly encounters, spectral sightings, and echoes of love long lost have turned the Dome Caesar into more than a resort. It has become a place where the past lingers just a breath away. The story begins with a man named Thomas Rowe, a visionary, a romantic, and a businessman. Rowe fell in love not only with the beauty of St. Pete Beach, but also with a woman who would change his life. Legend tells of Rowe's youthful time studying in London, where he met a Spanish opera singer named Lucinda. Their love blossomed quickly, passionately, but her family, disapproving of the relationship, sent Lucinda back to Spain, heartbroken. Thomas never saw her again. She died young, but before she passed, she is said to have written him a letter, signing it, "I shall be yours always and forever." Devastated, but never forgetting her, Rowe returned to the United States. He carried her memory like a sacred talisman, and years later, poured that sorrow and devotion into building the Dome Caesar. He designed the hotel with Mediterranean flair, adorned it with classical touches, and built it as if to honor Lucinda herself. To many, the Pink Palace wasn't just a resort, it was a monument of enduring love. Rowe even had a replica of a marble fountain from London installed on the property, where he was often seen quietly reflecting, murmuring to the wind. But Rowe's story took another tragic turn. In 1940, just 12 years after the grand opening of the Dome Caesar, he collapsed outside the hotel and died suddenly from a heart attack. He never got to say goodbye, never got to watch over his beloved Pink Palace as he had dreamed, or so it seemed. That's where the legend begins to deepen. Over the decades, countless guests and employees have reported seeing a tall man in a white sutro-esque preferred attire wandering the halls of the hotel. He's been spotted gazing out of the upper-level windows, standing by the fountain, or appearing near the beach at twilight, often vanishing the moment someone tries to approach. His presence isn't malevolent. In fact, most who claim to have seen him describe a quiet, watchful figure, one who seems more like a guardian than a ghost. One of the most chilling stories comes from a young couple who stayed in one of the upper suites. Late one night, they awoke to the sound of soft, classical music and the smell of roses wafting through the air. Confused, they stepped into the hallway and saw, for a fleeting second, a man and a woman dancing, gliding elegantly across the floor in what looked like vintage evening attire, and then they were gone. The couple later described the woman's dress as a 1920s opera gown. Could it have been Lucinda, reunited at last with Thomas? Other guests have reported more subtle, flickering lights in the ballroom when no one is there, footsteps echoing in empty hallways, locked doors opening on their own. elevators that stop at floors no one requested. One night clerk recalled being alone at the front desk when he heard the distinctive clack of dress shoes walking toward him. He looked up, expecting a guest, but no one was there. The sound continued past the desk and into the lobby, fading slowly as if disappearing into thin air. The Julia Morgan House. Whispers of tragedy. Tucked away in the serene coastal town of San Luis Obispo lies the Julia Morgan House, a quaint yet foreboding bed and breakfast that has earned its place among California's most haunted hotels. Designed by renowned architect Julia Morgan, best known for her work on Hearst Castle, the house exudes an understated elegance that belies the tragedy etched into its foundation. Built in the early 20th century, the property was originally intended as a retreat for artists and intellectuals. However, its peaceful beginnings were soon overshadowed by a series of harrowing events that would forever taint its legacy. The central figure in the house's haunting narrative is Catherine de, a reclusive poet who resided there during the 1930s, plagued by mental illness and a crumbling marriage, sought solace in the solitude of the seaside estate. Her descent into madness culminated in a horrific act of violence when she allegedly murdered her estranged husband during a heated confrontation in the master bedroom. Witnesses claimed to hear screams piercing the night air, followed by an ominous silence. By morning, Devereaux had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only bloodstains on the hardwood floors and cryptic verses scrawled on the walls. Since then, guests at the Julia Morgan House have reported unnerving encounters linked to Catherine's tormented spirit. Many describe hearing faint scratching sounds emanating from the walls, as though someone or something is clawing desperately to escape. Others recount waking up to find their bedsheets tangled impossibly tight around their limbs, as if restrained by invisible hands. The most disturbing accounts come from visitors staying in the master bedroom. Shadows flit across the corners of vision, and the acrid smell of iron fills the air, evoking the grisly scene that transpired decades ago. Adding to the house's eerie atmosphere is the recurring appearance of a spectral figure believed to be Catherine herself, dressed in a flowing white gown. She is often seen wandering the grounds at dusk, her hollow eyes fixed on some unseen point in the distance. Some guests claim to feel an icy draft pass through them as she drifts by, while others report hearing mournful whispers pleading for forgiveness. In one particularly chilling incident, a couple staying in the house swore they saw Catherine standing at the foot of their bed, her translucent form illuminated by moonlight. When they attempted to speak to her, she vanished into thin air, leaving behind an oppressive sense of dread. Perched along the Atlantic shoreline, the St. Augustine Lighthouse rises into the sky like a steadfast sentinel. Its black and white spiral pattern a striking contrast against the blue Florida sky. Built in 1874 to replace an earlier Spanish watchtower turnbeacon, the lighthouse has served for generations as a guide to sailors navigating the treacherous waters off the coast of the oldest city in the United States. But while its lantern room beams a reassuring light across the sea, its history tells a much darker tale, one that has led many to call it the most haunted location in Florida. From the moment construction began on the lighthouse in the 1870s, tragedy seemed woven into its very foundation. During its construction, mishaps and misfortunes occurred with unnerving frequency. The most tragic of these incidents involved the drowning of several young children, whose laughter once echoed through the construction site, but whose voices may now be heard under more chilling circumstances. The story begins with Hezekiah Pitty, a construction foreman hired to oversee the building of the lighthouse tower. To save time, a small railcar system was installed to transport supplies from the beach to the worksite. For the children of the construction workers, it quickly became a source of entertainment, offering them thrilling rides along the tracks toward the water. Among those who delighted in this dangerous pastime were Petey's own daughters. On a warm summer day in 1873, a group of children, including Petey's daughters, climbed into the cart for what would be their last ride. As the cart approached the end of the line near the water, it failed to stop. With a jolt, it careened off the tracks and plunged into the ocean. Several children were trapped beneath the heavy cart and drowned, Only one child survived. Their lifeless bodies were pulled from the water and buried not far from the lighthouse. And according to countless visitors and staff, their spirits never truly left. Visitors to the lighthouse often report hearing the unmistakable sounds of children's laughter echoing in the tower's stairwell. Some claim they have seen shadowy figures darting up and down the 219 steps, and others have heard the giggles of unseen children playing hide-and-seek. Among the relics and exhibits in the Keeper's House Museum, one woman recounted walking through the exhibit hall when she felt a sudden tug on the hem of her skirt, only to turn around and find no one there. A security guard, patrolling after hours, once heard a ball bounce down the staircase. When he turned on the lights and inspected the steps, there was nothing to be found. But the children are not alone in their restless vigil. Another tragedy that haunts the lighthouse is that of a construction worker who fell to his death from the scaffolding while working on the tower. Though his name has been lost to history, his presence has not. Reports of a tall, shadowy figure standing on the catwalk of the lighthouse, only to vanish moments later, had become almost routine. Maintenance workers have reported feeling as though someone is watching them from the upper landings, even when the tower is empty. Some have described hearing heavy boots on the metal stairs, always a step or two behind them, yet no one is ever there. The most active part of the lighthouse grounds may be the keeper's house itself. During the 1950s, a fire destroyed much of the original structure, and for a time it sat abandoned. Its charred remains the perfect stage for ghostly encounters. When restoration work began decades later, paranormal activity seemed to intensify. Workers complained of tools going missing or being moved, only to find them in inexplicable places. Others heard footsteps pacing the empty rooms, or doors slamming shut on their own. Even now, visitors walking through the restored house sometimes find cold spots that chill their bones. Despite the sweltering Florida heat just outside, some claim that the spirit of a former lighthouse keeper still lingers in the building. Many believe this is the ghost of Joseph Andrew, a man who served as keeper of the earlier lighthouse and fell to his death while painting the tower in the 1850s. Though that incident occurred before the current lighthouse was built, local lore insists that his spirit migrated with the structure, tied forever to the duties he once performed. Tour guides have reported seeing a man in a blue coat walking the grounds late at night, vanishing as soon as they approach. One particularly unsettling account comes from a former volunteer who stayed overnight as part of a paranormal research project. Around 2 a.m., he ventured into the tower alone, flashlight in hand, documenting sounds and electromagnetic readings. As he climbed the stairs, the flashlight began to flicker. Then it died completely. Moments later, he heard a voice, a whisper so faint it was almost carried away by the wind. Say his name. Frozen in place, he could feel a hand press lightly against his back. He turned quickly, but the staircase behind him was empty. When he made it back down, shaken and pale, he vowed never to enter the tower again. Photographs taken at the lighthouse frequently show anomalies, orbs floating in the air, strange blurs in otherwise clear shots, and shadowy figures standing at windows or peering through the railings at the top of the tower. Skeptics claim these are mere tricks of light or reflections, but for those who felt the cold breath of something unseen on the back of their neck, the explanations seem far too simple. EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, have captured chilling utterances within the lighthouse and its grounds. Investigators have recorded voices whispering words like help, stay, and even full sentences like, I didn't mean to fall. These ghostly statements are often reviewed after the sessions, unheard by the investigators in real time. It adds another layer of mystery to an already uncanny place. During guided ghost tours, participants are often asked to remain quiet and observant, especially when ascending the tower. Some report feeling dizzy or disoriented about halfway up the steps, as if something unseen is affecting their balance. Others hear what sounds like breathing behind them, labored, slow, to close, only to find no one within reach. Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp, nestled in the quiet heart of Central Florida, is more than just a quaint village with Victorian homes and moss-stripped oak trees, known internationally as the psychic capital of the world. This unassuming community harbors a deep and abiding connection to the unseen. Established in 1894 by George P. Colby, a trance medium guided by his spirit guide Seneca, Cassadaga was envisioned as a haven for spiritualists, seeking a place where the physical and metaphysical could meet. Over a century later, that vision remains intact, thriving and pulsing with energy that many claim comes from the other side. Unlike typical tourist destinations, Cassadaga doesn't rely on flashy attractions or gimmicks. What draws visitors from all over the world is the promise of contact with the unknown. The camp is home to dozens of certified mediums, healers, and psychics who live and work within its boundaries. Each house has its own energy, its own history. Some say the spirits never leave Cassadaga, and for many, that's the point. Wander its tree-lined streets, and you'll feel it. A shift in the air, an odd stillness, like the town itself is holding its breath. Many visitors describe a feeling of being watched, but not in a menacing way. It's as though the air vibrates with whispers. Cold spots appear without explanation, and voices sometimes echo in the silence, even when no one is around. Numerous skeptics have arrived expecting theatrics and left shaken by experiences they couldn't explain. One of the most visited places in the camp is the Cassadaga Hotel, an old Spanish-style building that serves as both lodging and a spiritual hub. The hotel is rumored to be deeply haunted, with tales of a spirit named Arthur, a former inhabitant who never quite moved on. Guests report objects moving on their own, doors locking without cause, and the sound of footsteps in empty hallways. Some say Arthur is a benign presence, curious, not cruel, but his activity has startled many in the middle of the night. A few mediums believe he lingers out of loyalty to the camp, watching over the visitors, and the psychic energy that flows through its foundations are held regularly in private homes and designated gathering spaces. They are intimate, candlelit affairs, with circles formed by both believers and the merely curious. It is not uncommon for a medium to begin speaking in a voice not their own, or to relay hyper-specific messages from long-departed loved ones. Some participants feel cold hands rest on their shoulders. Others hear whispers directly in their ears, even though no one is near them. Not every is dramatic, but each leaves an indelible mark, an invitation to reimagine what death really means. The Colby Memorial Temple stands as a spiritual and physical heart of the camp. This simple but resonant structure hosts lectures, healing services, and public message events, where mediums relay messages from spirits to attendees. Often the room grows hushed as a medium calls out a name, a detail, or a memory that perfectly matches someone in the audience. Reactions range from tears to laughter, but always with a reverent sense of awe. It is not theater. To those who come seeking solace or answers, it is confirmation of connection. Cassadaga also offers spiritual healing sessions, aura cleansing, and energy balancing. Practitioners report that their hands warm or tingle as they move over blocked energy, while clients often feel lighter or calmer afterward. Some believe this energy work opens doorways between planes, allowing for greater spiritual communication. Others simply describe a profound sense of peace they cannot explain. Perhaps one of the most compelling aspects of Cassadaga is its psychic readings. They are not vague or generic. The certified mediums undergo rigorous training and must pass multiple evaluations before practicing. Sit for a reading and you may find your reader recounting exact phrases your grandmother used to say, or describing a pendant you lost as a child. These aren't cold readings, they're precise and often unsettling in their accuracy. Even the most hardened skeptics have admitted that something in Cassadaga defies logic. But it's not all tranquility. Some visitors have left shaken, convinced they encountered something darker. A few have reported being followed back to the hotels by unseen forces, experiencing vivid dreams, or waking to find scratches on their skin. These rare but intense experiences have led some to believe there are energies in Cassadaga that aren't entirely benevolent. Whether these are misinterpreted spiritual encounters or signs of something more sinister, the camp does little to downplay them. To the residents, spirits like people can have moods, complexities, and unfinished business. At night, Cassadaga becomes something entirely different. The lantern-lit sidewalks cast long, distorted shadows. Crickets fall silent when you pass certain buildings. The cemetery, just outside the camp's borders, is a hotspot for spectral sightings. Visitors report glowing orbs, disembodied voices, and even full apparitions walking among the headstones. One local legend speaks of a woman in a flowing dress who vanishes if you try to approach. Another involves a child who giggles in the darkness, always just out of sight. Cassadaga is not a theme park of ghosts and gimmicks. It is a living, breathing experiment in belief, a community suspended between two worlds. To visit is to open oneself to possibility. The possibility that our loved ones are never truly gone, that the veil is thinner than we imagine, and that the unknown may be more familiar than we fear. For those who come with an open heart and a respectful spirit, Cassadaga offers more than answers. It offers connection, and sometimes it offers a glimpse into forever. Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp, nestled in the quiet heart of Central Florida, is more than just a quaint village with Victorian homes and moss-stripped oak trees. Known internationally as the psychic capital of the world, this unassuming community harbors a deep and abiding connection to the unseen. Established in 1894 by George P. Colby, a trance medium guided by his spirit guide Cynic, Cassadaga was envisioned as a haven for spiritualists, seeking a place where the physical and metaphysical could meet. Over a century later, that vision remains intact, thriving and pulsing with energy that many claim comes from the other side. Unlike typical tourist destinations, Cassadaga doesn't rely on flashy attractions or gimmicks. What draws visitors from all over the world is the promise of contact with the unknown. The camp is home to dozens of certified mediums, healers, and psychics who live and work within its boundaries. Each house has its own energy, its own history. Some say the spirits never leave Cassadaga, and for many, that's the point. Wander its tree-lined streets, and you'll feel it. A shift in the air, an odd stillness, like the town itself is holding its breath. Many visitors describe a feeling of being watched, but not in a menacing way. It's as though the air vibrates with whispers. Cold spots appear without explanation, and voices sometimes echo in the silence, even when no one is around. Numerous skeptics have arrived, expecting theatrics, and left shaken by experiences they couldn't explain. One of the most visited places in the camp is the Cassadaga Hotel, an old Spanish-style building that serves as both lodging and a spiritual hub. The hotel is rumored to be deeply haunted, with tales of a spirit named Arthur, a former inhabitant who never quite moved on. Guests report objects moving on their own, doors locking without cause, and the sound of footsteps in empty hallways. Some say Arthur is a benign presence curus, not cruel, but his activity has startled many in the middle of the night. A few mediums believe he lingers out of loyalty to the camp, watching over the visitors, and the psychic energy that flows through its foundations are held regularly in private homes and designated gathering spaces. They are intimate, candlelit affairs, with circles formed by both believers and the merely curious. It is not uncommon for a medium to begin speaking in a voice not their own, or to relay hyper-specific messages from long-departed loved ones. Some participants feel cold hands rest on their shoulders. Others hear whispers directly in their ears, even though no one is near them. Not every is dramatic, but each leaves an indelible mark and invitation to reimagine what death really means. The Colby Memorial Temple stands as the spiritual and physical heart of the camp. This simple but resonant structure hosts healing services and public message events, where mediums relay messages from spirits to attendees. Often, the room grows hushed as a medium calls out a name, a detail, or a memory that perfectly matches someone in the audience. Reactions range from tears to laughter, but always with a reverent sense of awe. It is not theater. To those who come seeking solace, or answers. It is confirmation of connection. Cassadaga also offers spiritual healing sessions, laying of hands, aura cleansing, and energy balancing. Practitioners report that their hands warm or tingle as they move over blocked energy, while clients often feel lighter or calmer afterward. Some believe this energy work opens doorways between planes, allowing for greater spiritual communication. Others simply describe a profound sense of peace they cannot explain. Perhaps one of the most compelling aspects of Cassadaga is its psychic readings. They are not vague or generic. The certified mediums undergo rigorous training and must pass multiple evaluations before practicing. Sit for a reading, and you may find your reader recounting exact phrases your grandmother used to say, or describing a pendant you lost as a child. These aren't cold readings, they're precise and often unsettling in their accuracy. Even the most hardened skeptics have admitted that something in Cassadaga defies logic. But it's not all tranquility. Some visitors have left shaken, convinced they encountered something darker. A few have reported being followed back to their hotels by unseen forces, experiencing vivid dreams, or waking to find scratches on their skin. These rare but intense experiences have led some to believe there are energies in Cassadaga that aren't entirely benevolent. Whether these are misinterpreted spiritual encounters or signs of something more sinister, the camp does little to downplay them. To the residents, spirits-like people can have moods, complexities, and unfinished business. At night, Cassadaga becomes something entirely different. The lantern-lit sidewalks cast long, distorted shadows. Crickets fall silent when you pass certain buildings. The cemetery, just outside the camp's borders, is a hotspot for spectral sightings. Visitors report glowing orbs, disembodied voices, and even full apparitions walking among the headstones. One local legend speaks of a woman in a flowing dress who vanishes if you try to approach. Another involves a child who giggles in the darkness, always just out of sight. Cassadaga is not a theme park of ghosts and gimmicks. It is a living, breathing experiment in belief, a community suspended between two worlds. To visit is to open oneself to possibility. The possibility that our loved ones are never truly gone, that the veil is thinner than we imagine, and that the unknown may be more familiar than we fear. For those who come with an open heart and a respectful spirit, Cassadaga offers more than answers. It offers connection, and sometimes it offers a glimpse into forever. Skeptics, of course, offer alternative explanations. Creaky old floors, overactive imaginations, drafts from ill-fitted windows. But even they concede that the atmosphere of the Kirby Smith house is unlike any other. There is a weight to it, an invisible pressure that seems to wrap around every visitor. Something where the memory, energy, or entity remains alive within those walls. In the heart of Key West, where the pastel homes sway gently in the salty breeze and the sound of laughter drifts from nearby bars, lies a place where the living walk side by side with the dead. The Key West City Cemetery, often referred to by locals as the Wooden Graveyard, is not your ordinary burial ground. It is a realm suspended between life and death, beauty and sorrow, where the past clings tightly to the present, and where every tombstone tells a story whispered through time. The cemetery was established in 1847 after a hurricane swept through the island, washing away the oldest cemetery near the southern shore. The need for higher ground was immediate, and the new burial ground was placed at the center of the island, near Solaris Hill, the highest natural elevation in Key West, only a few feet above sea level. But even at this height, the cemetery's graves rest mostly above ground, an architectural necessity due to the coral rock and high water table. The result is a maze of whitewashed tombs, crumbling and oddly poetic epitaphs that give the graveyard a unique and eerie charm. Wandering through the cemetery, the first thing one notices is the silence. It is not just the absence of voices, but the presence of something deeper and emotional quiet that weighs on the soul. The sea breeze whispers through the fronds of nearby palm trees, but beneath it lingers something else, something older. Visitors have described the air as thick, like walking through water, with a strange pressure that builds the longer one stays among the tombs. Many who come here report seeing shadowy figures slipping between gravestones, often vanishing the moment they are seen. Tourists speak of sudden cold spots that bloom under the Florida sun, inexplicable chills that run down their spines even in the sweltering heat. Photographs taken inside the cemetery sometimes reveal orbs of light, misty shapes, or translucent faces, evidence, some say, of spirits still lingering. One of the cemetery's most talked about residents is Thomas Romer, a Bahamian sailor who lived to the age of 108. His tomb bears a simple epitaph, yet those who visit his grave often report hearing what sounds like a low, gravelly voice humming an old maritime tune. Some say if you visit on a quiet morning, just before the sun fully rises, you can hear the sound of a single set of footsteps crunching over the gravel behind you, only to turn and find yourself alone. Not far from Romer's grave is the resting place of a woman named Gloria Russell. Her headstone reads, "I told you I was sick," though darkly humorous. The epitaph marks a life reportedly full of misdiagnoses and hospital visits. Locals say that late at night, a ghostly female figure can be seen standing at her grave, her hand placed gently over her chest, eyes closed, as if finally at rest or still waiting for someone to acknowledge the pain that plagued her in life. One of the most unsettling tales involves the grave of a young girl named Ellen Mallory. According to legend, Ellen died of yellow fever in the late 1800s. Her life cut tragically short. Her grave, surrounded by a small wrought iron fence, is often adorned with flowers, toys, and trinkets left by visitors who feel drawn to her story. Some claim they have seen her apparition, pale and slender, in a faded dress, walking along the path near her tomb, always alone, always searching. Others say they've heard the sound of a child crying near her grave, the sobs fading into the wind as quickly as they begin. The wooden graveyard moniker comes not only from the fragile wooden crosses that once marked many of the plots, but from the cemetery's overall feeling of everything here seems to be in a slow process of decay. White marble is stained with streaks of rust and mildew. Stone angels stand with faces weathered into unreadable expressions. Even the newer tombs seem ancient in the filtered light, and the ground beneath them feels unsteady, as if it remembers every storm that has ever swept across the island. One particularly infamous legend centers around the so-called voodoo section of the cemetery, tucked in the far back. This area is home to a series of above-ground crypts said to be cursed. According to local folklore, these graves belong to practitioners of ancient rituals brought to the Keys from the Caribbean. Visitors to this part of the cemetery report a distinct change in the air, thicker, warmer, more charged. Some have heard whispered chants in languages they do not understand, while others describe sudden headaches, dizziness, or an overwhelming desire to flee. A few who dared to disrespect the grave stepping on them speak mockingly, claim they were followed home by an unseen presence that disturbed their sleep and moved objects in their homes 4 days after. Paranormal investigators who've studied the cemetery bring with them tools, EMF detectors, infrared cameras, EVP recorders, but often leave with more questions than answers. Many recordings made within the cemetery's boundaries contain unexplained voices, names whispered from nowhere. The phrase "help me" repeated multiple times, and in one chilling case, a long, slow exhale that sounded like it was made right into the microphone, though no one was near the device at the time. Caretakers of the cemetery, both past and present, share quiet warnings with those who ask too many questions. One former groundskeeper claimed he would never walk the cemetery after sunset, saying the spirits wake up after dark. He recounted an evening when he forgot his keys and had to retrieve them just after dusk. As he approached the main gate, he saw a man in a long coat standing still among the tombs, head bowed. Thinking it was a late visitor, he called out, but the man never moved. When he got closer, the figure vanished into thin air, shaken. He quit the job soon after. Tucked away in the sleepy town of Punta Gorda, Florida, hidden beneath the moss-stripped oaks and the hush of old headstones, sits a stone relic wrapped in shadowy legend, known only as the Devil's Chair. This seemingly innocuous slab of weathered granite has become the centerpiece of one of the region's most chilling tales. At first glance, it appears like any other mourning bench found in old southern cemeteries, an ornate, moss-stripped chair at the edge of a family plot. But to locals and those who've tested the legend, it is something far more sinister. A place where reality twists, where unseen forces stir, and where the line between myth and malevolence is all too thin. The origins of the Devil's Chair are murky. No official records explain its construction, nor who commissioned it. It appears in maps and cemetery layouts as early as the 1920s, but even that is speculation. The chair stands alone in a graveyard that time seems to have forgotten, surrounded by crumbling headstones and graves, with inscriptions long worn smooth by rain and heat. Though dozens of chairs like it exist in other cemeteries originally built as mourning seats for grieving relatives, this one has a darker reputation that no other can match. Local legend tells that if you sit in the Devil's Chair at midnight, something will happen. Not something vague or symbolic, something immediate, visceral, and terrifying. The tale goes that the devil himself laid claim to the chair long ago, drawn by some terrible act committed on the grounds. Some versions say a grieving widow cursed God while sitting in the chair, damning her soul and opening a portal to darker forces. Others speak of occult rituals carried out on the property, blood spilled in the name of forbidden knowledge, and a pact struck beneath the full moon. Regardless of which version you hear, the result is always the same. The chair now belongs to something otherworldly, and anyone who dares to sit in it during the witching hour risks awakening what lies beneath. Those who've tested the legend never walk away unchanged. One local man, drawn by equal parts curiosity and skepticism, visited the cemetery with a group of friends on a warm summer night. They found the chair easily enough, its outline barely visible in the moonlight. He sat down, laughing off the warnings, and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wind died completely. The cicadas fell silent. The air, humid and thick just moments before, grew cold. He described a sudden weight pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Then came the laughter, low, guttural, and cruel, as if it were echoing from inside his own head. He jumped up and ran, his friends following close behind. Days later, he reported seeing figures standing at the edge of his property at night, their eyes glowing faintly red. Lights in his house flickered without cause, and he began hearing whispers in the dark. He moved out of state 6 months later. Something followed me, he said, and it didn't want to let go. Another tale involves a group of teenagers who visited the cemetery as part of a dare. One girl, defiant and fearless, sat in the chair while her friends filmed her. As they laughed and joked, the screen on the camera turned to static. Her face twisted suddenly, her body freezing as if her friends thought she was playing along until her nose began to bleed and her eyes rolled back in her head. She collapsed moments later. Though she regained consciousness shortly after, she refused to speak of what she saw. Months passed, and she became withdrawn, paranoid, and eventually dropped out of school. Her family moved without explanation. To this day, no one knows what happened during those brief moments on the chair, but the video corrupted and Granny captures her expression just before the camera died. It is one of pure terror. Paranormal investigators have visited the site many times, each bringing with them sophisticated equipment, EMF readers, infrared cameras, audio recorders. Some report elevated electromagnetic readings around the chair, along with sudden battery drainage and unusual interference. One team captured a recording during a midnight session. A whisper can be heard, clear and deliberate. "Come closer." No one present at the time had spoken. In another investigation, a researcher placed a digital thermometer on the seat of the chair. The reading plummeted by 20 degrees in under a minute. Moments later, their camera captured a brief, flickering shadow crossing the cemetery path behind them tall. Those who live near the cemetery tell their own stories. A retired nurse, whose house borders the graveyard fence, claims to see lights dancing between the stones late at night. Though there are no lamps and no people, she's heard laughter drifting from the direction of the chair. And once, footsteps crunching in a gravel path, but no one ever appears. A groundskeeper who worked at the cemetery for over 20 years refuses to go near the chair after dusk. "I won't even look at it," he once said. "Things that shouldn't be here gather around it when the sun goes down." What makes the legend of the devil's chair especially disturbing is not just the phenomenon reported around it, but the psychological toll it seems to exact. Those who've sat in the chair often describe nightmares that begin immediately afterward, dreams of burning landscapes, disembodied hands, voices that hiss names they've never heard before. Some wake up with scratches on their backs or arms, though they sleep alone. One man, who laughed off the legend as childish folklore, admitted to being haunted by something since his midnight visit. "It's in my house," he said. "It moves things. It turns off lights. Sometimes I hear it breathing near my bed." There are also subtler accounts, less dramatic, but no less chilling. Tourists unaware of the chair's story have sat to rest, only to stand up moments later, overcome with nausea, vertigo, or sudden emotion. One woman burst into tears and couldn't explain why. Another became violently ill hours later and couldn't stop shaking. "It felt like something crawled into my skin," she later said. "Like I brought something back with me." The Edison and Fort Winter estates in Fort Myers, Florida, are places where history, innovation, and the supernatural converge. Once the seasonal retreats of two of America's greatest inventors and industrialists, Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, the estates are now museums, offering a glimpse into a bygone era of creativity and exploration. But beneath the bright Florida sun and the peaceful shade of banyan trees lies a persistent, whispered truth. This site is not only a landmark of invention, but also a haven for spirits that refuse to leave. Thomas Edison purchased the property in 1885, drawn to Fort Myers by the climate and tranquility. Here, he built his winter home, Seminole Lodge, along with a laboratory and gardens. Years later, his close friend Henry Ford bought the adjoining estate, the mangoes making the two homes a seasonal hub for invention and companionship. The estates today remain beautifully preserved, showcasing not only their contributions to science and industry, but also something far more elusive in atmosphere, charged with unseen energy. Visitors are often first captivated by the beauty of the grounds. Edison's botanical experiments are still evident in the diverse array of exotic plants he cultivated, and the laboratory remains filled with antique equipment preserved just as he left it. But once the initial awe fades, a different sensation often takes its place, an eerie sense of being watched, of not being entirely alone. Many believe that Thomas Edison never truly left the property. He was famously fascinated by the possibility of communicating with the dead and even spoke of inventing a device that would facilitate contact with the spirit world. Though no such invention was ever formally revealed, paranormal researchers and estate staff suggest that Edison's spirit might still be tinkering in the afterlife, continuing his quest to bridge the gap between worlds. Employees have reported unexplained phenomena in the lab where Edison spent countless hours. Strange knocks echo through the rooms when no one else is around. Lights flicker in patterns that seem too deliberate to be electrical faults. One former guide recounted an experience where an overhead bulb blinked rapidly as she described Edison's experiments with light. The moment she moved to a new topic, the flickering stopped. Skeptics might call it coincidence, but for those who've worked at the estate for years, it's part of a larger pattern that defies easy explanation. Tourists also report ghostly encounters in the houses themselves. In the Edison home, footsteps are often heard ascending the staircase, though no one is visible. Doors open and close on their own, with the heavy hinges creaking in the silence of otherwise empty rooms. One couple, visiting during a quiet weekday morning, claimed to have seen a figure in period clothing standing in the doorway of the study. As they approached, the figure vanished without a trace. Some say that Henry Ford's spirit also makes appearances, though less frequently encountered than Edison. The ghostly image of a man in suspenders has been seen near the garage and along the pathways between the houses. Witnesses have described the figure pausing briefly, as though surveying the grounds, before fading into the surrounding air. These apparitions often leave behind a sharp scent of motor oil or cigar smoke, despite the estates being smoke-free zones. Nightfall brings an even more heightened sense of unease. During special evening tours, guides have noted that shadows move strangely, as if cast by figures no one can see. Cameras malfunction inexplicably, particularly around the laboratory. One paranormal investigation team captured audio that resembled faint murmurs, which seemed to say words like invention and record. When analyzed, the voice did not match anyone present at the time. Even the gardens, a place once intended for peaceful reflection, carry their share of spectral stories. The towering banyan tree, a gift from Harvey Firestone, seems to act as a spiritual conductor. Sensitive individuals claim the energy near the tree is unusually strong. Several have described feeling lightheaded, overwhelmed by emotion, or enveloped in a deep sense of sadness that vanishes once they leave the area. Others report hearing whispers among the leaves when no wind is present. There is also the tale of the greenhouse apparition. Late one afternoon, a horticulturist working on the property glanced up from her pruning to see a figure inside the greenhouse, a man in a white suit with a Panama hat, holding what looked like a notebook. Assuming it was an actor or historical interpreter, she continued her work. Moments later, she looked up again, and the figure was gone. A search turned up. Nothing. The staff later confirmed that no reenactor had been scheduled that day. While many visitors leave the Edison and Ford Winter estates inspired by the stories of innovation, others carry with them memories that are harder to explain. Cold spots in sun-drenched rooms, sudden drops in temperature near old equipment, the feeling of being touched on the shoulder when no one is behind them. These are all part of the modern mythology surrounding the estates. Some believe the spiritual activity stems not from any dark tragedy or violent history, but rather from a deep emotional imprint left by Edison and Ford. Their devotion to their work, their long hours in the lab, their intense friendship and rivalry, all these emotions may have embedded themselves into the very walls of the buildings. In this view, the estates are less a haunted house than a spiritual echo chamber, reverberating with energy from another time. Yet not all the energy here feels benign. A few stories stand out for their chilling detail. A security guard doing rounds after hours once claimed he saw a door swing open in the laboratory, then close slowly behind an unseen force. He called out, thinking it might be a trespasser, but received no reply. As he turned to leave, he reportedly heard a voice whisper his name directly into his ear, though no one was nearby. In the heart of Miami, nestled behind luxury developments and manicured lawns, there once stood a mansion so cloaked in shadow and horror that its legacy has outlived its physical form. Though the infamous Lalaurie Mansion is forever tied to New Orleans, a lesser-known but equally chilling story haunts the soil of Florida. Locals refer to it as the Lalaurie House of Miami, a grim reflection of cruelty, tragedy, and restless spirits. In the early 1900s, this mansion sat on the edge of what was then a sparsely populated part of the city, built by a wealthy Cuban sugar baron who had fled revolution and unrest in his homeland. The house was grand and imposing, its Spanish colonial architecture marked by wrought iron balconies, sweeping staircases, and thick stucco walls that absorbed the heat of the sun by day and echoed with strange sounds by night. The Shiga, better known in whispered circles only as Senator Adami, was a man of immense wealth, but questionable morality. Slavery had long since been outlawed, but many claimed he brought with him the cruel customs of the old plantations. Servants were seldom seen leaving the estate. Locals noted that even deliveries were left at the gate, and those who did cross the threshold rarely spoke of what they saw inside. Rumors grew of unspeakable practices, medical curiosities, and ritualistic rites inflicted upon those unfortunate enough to fall under Adam's control. Whether out of fear or disbelief, authorities turned a blind eye. But in 1908, after years of whispered suspicion, something happened that could no longer be ignored. One night in the spring of that year, a tremendous fire broke out at the mansion. The blaze roared through the estate, with unnatural fury, lighting the sky like a beacon of judgment. When fire crews arrived, they found more than flames. In the smoldering ruins of the mansion's basement, behind hidden walls and iron doors, they uncovered narrow cells, crude medical equipment, and the skeletal remains of dozens of people. Some were shackled, others laid out on wooden slabs. A few showed signs of having been burned while still alive, their limbs contorted in agony. Adami was never found. Some say he perished in the fire. Others claim he escaped, retreating into the Everglades, where he succumbed to the swamp or, more ominously, continues to live in some cursed form. The house was razed not long after, its very foundation ripped from the earth, as if to erase the memory of what had transpired. But memory, as any ghost will tell you, is not so easily buried. In the decades that followed, the land remained undeveloped. Those who tried to build found their crews stricken with illness, misfortune, and in some cases, madness. Surveyors reported hearing cries beneath their feet, muffled sobs, and screams that pierced the silence of the midday sun. One worker reportedly fled the site after witnessing what he described as a woman crawling through the ground with her mouth sewn shut. When asked about it later, he refused to speak and eventually left the state entirely. Even as Miami boomed in the mid-20th century, the plot where the mansion once stood was left untouched, surrounded by bustling neighborhoods, but never integrated into them. Children told stories about the screaming lot, daring one another to approach it at night. Some claimed to have seen flickering lights in the darkness, or smelled the acrid scent of burning flesh carried on the breeze. By the 1980s, urban legends had firmly taken root. Paranormal investigators began arriving, curious about the site's strange energy. One team, led by a well-known psychic medium named Carol Jensen, conducted on a land in 1986. The footage, grainy and filled with static, was never officially released, but leaked copies showed Jensen entering a trance-like state, screaming violently in a language no one could identify. Moments later, she collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. Her team reported that the ground had trembled and a dark figure had appeared behind them, tall and thin, with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. Jensen never worked again. She was later institutionalized, plagued by nightmares of burning mouths and crawling hands. Attempts to sell the land were futile. Realtors reported feelings of dread just standing on the edge of the property line. Multiple drone cameras malfunctioned while flying over it. Electronic equipment would short-circuit, and no birds ever landed on the trees that grew near the borders of the lot. Despite the ever-growing demand for real estate in Miami, no one seemed willing to touch this place. Some say the spirits remain because of the horrific suffering they endured, trapped in a loop of agony and fear. Others believe that Adami, or something worse, still lingers either physically hidden beneath the soil or spiritually bound to the site of his cruelty. Mediums describe the presence as not merely residual, but intelligent and malevolent, capable of interaction and violence. One psychic claimed that the entity told her, "This land belongs to the dead. Leave or join them." As recently as the 2010s, new tales have emerged. A group of thrill-seeking teenagers reportedly broke into the fenced-off property one Halloween night. According to the one survivor, they brought a Ouija board and began asking questions. Within minutes, one of the group members screamed and vanished into the underbrush. Another was found the next morning, sitting catatonic near the gate, muttering about black eyes in the trees. The missing teen was never located. Despite extensive search efforts, surrounding residents continue to report strange occurrences. Pets go missing. Appliances turn on and off on their own. And sometimes, late at night, the screams return soft at first, then rising to a piercing crescendo before abruptly falling silent. Built in 1893, the old Hamilton County Jail in Jasper, Florida, stands as a grim monument to a past steeped in hardship, violence, and lingering sorrow. Its weathered brick facade looms over the surrounding town like a sentinel of long-forgotten memories that some say are not forgotten at all, but instead endlessly replayed within its crumbling walls by the spirits of those who never truly left. The jail was constructed in an era when justice was swift and often brutal, designed to house both petty criminals and the most violent offenders. It featured thick iron bars, narrow, dark corridors, and small, suffocating cells. The heat of Florida summers baked the walls, turning the building into an oven, while winter brought bitter drafts that clawed through the stone like icy fingers. Many prisoners languished here for months, even years, awaiting judgment or, in some cases, death. What sets the old Hamilton County Jail apart from other 19th century lockups is the sheer weight of paranormal activity reported by visitors, employees, and investigators. The stories began not long after the jail was shut down in the mid-20th century. Locals passing by at night claimed to hear clanging metal, as if a prisoner were shaking the bars of a long empty cell. Others reported disembodied cries, some mournful, some filled with rage that seemed to drift out through the broken windows, carried on the wind like forgotten prayers. The jail's most notorious prisoner was a man known only as Elijah, a drifter who had been accused of murder in the early 1900s. He was kept in isolation on the top floor, chained to the wall for most of his sentence, though the evidence against him was flimsy. Fear and superstition ran deep in the town at the time. People whispered that Elijah was not just a killer, but a practitioner of dark arts. The jailer reportedly refused to feed him directly, sliding a bowl through the door with a stick. When Elijah died, some say by suicide. Others, by neglect. The staff refused to handle the body. Legend says his corpse lay in the cell for 3 days, until a priest from a neighboring town arrived to remove it. Ever since, his cell has been the site of unexplainable activity. Paranormal teams report frigid temperatures in the room, sudden battery drains on electronic equipment, and, most chillingly, the sound of chains dragging across the floor when no one else is inside. Another common report involves the jail's basement, where a small holding area was used to isolate the most dangerous or mentally unstable inmates. Former employees have described the space as having a suffocating atmosphere, as though the air itself presses down on your chest. During investigations, EVP devices have captured faint voices pleading for help, whispering names, or repeating the word trapped. Visitors often leave shaken, describing the feeling of invisible hands brushing their shoulders or breath against their necks. The cells on the ground floor tell their own story. Graffiti from former inmates still stains the walls, some of it cryptic, some despairing, and some strangely childlike. Despite being in a space reserved for hardened adults, in one cell, the words "he waits in the dark" are scratched into the wall repeatedly, growing more erratic and deep toward the floor, as if the writer became frantic or lost control. Paranormal experts speculate that this might reference a specific entity that haunts the jail, perhaps something darker than a restless human spirit. Some who've spent the night locked in that cell speak of a pitch-black shadow that crawls along the ceiling and walls, watching, waiting. The stairwells are said to echo with phantom footsteps. Guests often report hearing someone walking heavily, just a few paces behind them, only to turn around and find the hall empty. Others describe the unmistakable sound of keys jingling, or a jail door slamming shut in the distance. Yet the building is no longer functional. No guards, no prisoners, and no keys to be found. These auditory apparitions lend credence to the belief that some of the former jailers still walk their rounds, perhaps unaware that their shift ended decades ago. One of the most documented hauntings involves a young woman named Clara, whose tragic story has become folklore in the region. Clara was arrested in the 1920s for an unknown offense, likely petty theft or vagrancy, but something happened while she was in custody. Rumors swirled of abuse, and within days, she was found hanged in her cell. Her spirit is now associated with sudden cold spots, the faint smell of lavender perfume, and soft crying heard during the night. In rare cases, women visitors claim to hear their own names whispered softly into their ears while standing near her former cell. Paranormal investigators have caught photographs showing a faint feminine figure peering through the bars, her expression mournful and distant. One of the jail's more terrifying aspects is its ability to disorient and affect the moods of visitors. Paranormal teams report that even seasoned investigators begin to feel lightheaded, nauseated, or overwhelmed with sadness after just a few hours inside. Some believe the jail acts as a spiritual sponge, absorbing the trauma, fear, and pain of decades, and now radiates it back toward anyone who steps within its walls. Guests occasionally become physically ill, while others break into tears, without understanding why. It is not uncommon for those who enter the building for a quick tour to leave abruptly, shaken and pale, unable to speak about what they felt or saw. The second floor, once housing the jailer's quarters and administrative rooms, has its own share of oddities. Doors open and close by themselves, sometimes slamming shut with enough force to rattle windows. Furniture has been found moved, despite the building being locked and secured overnight. A former caretaker claimed that, on multiple occasions, he would return in the morning to find chairs arranged in a circle in the center of the room as if a meeting or had taken place during the night. No one had access, and nothing had been disturbed on the security footage. Tucked away on the northeastern coast of Florida, St. Augustine breathes history. As the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the continental United States, its cobblestone streets and Spanish architecture whisper tales of centuries past. Among the city's most iconic landmarks is the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park, a lush, palm-lined sanctuary where myth and history meet, and where the air itself seems tinged with ancient magic. Long before Ponce arrived on these shores in the early 1500s, the land now encompassing the park was home to the Timucua people, a deeply spiritual indigenous tribe who revered the natural springs. They believed the waters held sacred properties and used the area as a ceremonial ground, a place of healing and connection with the divine. Archaeological evidence has uncovered burial sites, artifacts, and shell middens that date back over 3,000 years. Signs of a civilization in harmony with its mysterious environment. But as with so many sacred places disrupted by conquests, the tranquility of the Timucua gave way to violence, colonization, and spiritual When Spanish explorers came ashore, they brought not just a cross and the crown, but disease, war, and a disregard for the spiritual balance the natives held dear. The blood of warriors, priests, settlers, and sailors soon soaked the soil, and some believe their souls never left. Today, the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park is a celebrated tourist attraction, drawing visitors with promises of historical immersion and a taste of the legendary spring water. But those who visit at twilight, or who wander the grounds alone in the hush of morning mist, often find more than they expected. There is a particular silence in the air that doesn't feel quite natural. The wind rustles through the Spanish moss with an almost human whisper. Beneath the live oaks, shadows stretch and shift in ways that defy the direction of the sun. Many report an overwhelming sense of being watched, not with malice, necessarily, but with ancient sorrow, a melancholy that presses on the chest like an invisible weight. Some of the park's employees refuse to work late shifts. A longtime groundskeeper, who spoke on condition of anonymity, claimed that on several occasions he heard footsteps pacing behind him on the shelf paths, only to turn and find no one there. Another recalled the sound of chanting in an unfamiliar language rising from the area near the Timucua burial mound. Even when the park was empty, these experiences are so frequent that they've become quietly accepted, a part of the job. The centerpiece of the park, the famous Fountain of Youth Spring, lies within a small stone structure, where guests can drink from the sulphurous waters flowing from deep beneath the earth. Legend has it that one Ponce in his obsessive quest for eternal youth was led to this very site by native guides. Though there's no historical proof that he ever found the fountain, the myth took hold, and the spring became a symbol of both hope and hubris. Visitors who drink from the fountain often laugh and joke about turning back the clock. But there are some who don't laugh. A tourist from Pennsylvania once described an unnerving feeling of dizziness and nausea immediately after sipping the water, followed by a vivid vision of a Native American woman kneeling by the spring, her eyes locked on his. She wasn't angry, he said, just sad, like she was warning me not to take what didn't belong to me. Others have had more physical encounters. In one documented case from a paranormal investigation team, A member walking near the mission replica on the edge of the property felt something brush past her leg, as if a child had run by. When she turned, no one was there. Only the faint echo of giggling carried on the wind. Later that night, reviewing thermal camera footage, the team discovered a small, child-sized heat signature standing at the base of the wooden cross, and then vanishing in a blink. But not all spirits here are friendly. According to legend, a Spanish friar, who once ministered to the Timucua at this site, was murdered during a tribal uprising. His body left to rot near the spring. Some say his ghost still walks the grounds, appearing as a pale, robed figure, who vanishes whenever approached. In one case, a group of visitors on a guided tour reportedly saw the friar peering out from the shadows beneath the bell tower. The tour guide, startled and assuming it was a costumed actor, called out, but the figure simply faded into the stone wall behind him. Locals believe that the spirits here are not restless in the typical haunted house sense. Rather, they are bound to the land by centuries of reverence, pain, and spiritual disruption. The park sits on a convergence of cultural memory and historical trauma, a liminal space where time bends and the veil between the living and the dead grows thin. Some of the eeriest accounts come not from visitors, but from those who spend long hours caring for the grounds. A botanist who worked on a restoration project in the early 2000s claimed to have seen a Timucua elder standing beneath a tree near the marsh, motionless, and watching every morning at dawn. He would vanish before I could approach, she said. It was as if he was guarding something, or waiting for something. Indeed, this idea of guardianship is central to many of the legends surrounding the park. The spring, said to offer eternal life, may instead be a prison of sorts. There are tales of a woman in white, always seen near the water's edge, weeping silently before fading into the mist. Some believe she is one of the first settlers who perished in childbirth, her spirit caught in an endless cycle of grief. Others say she's older, perhaps even a manifestation of the land itself, mourning the disruption of its sacred flow. In the quiet town of Homestead, Florida, stands a monument that defies time, logic, and even gravity. Coral Castle, a sprawling stone complex carved entirely from oolitic limestone, was built single-handedly by one man, Edward Lee, standing barely 5 feet tall and weighing no more than 100 pounds. Leedsconen worked in solitude under cover of night, using tools he crafted himself. To this day, no one fully understands how he moved, carved, and placed the massive block, some weighing over 30 tons, with such precision and grace. But more than a feat of engineering, Coral Castle radiates a palpable aura of mystery. Many believe it's more than a monument to lost love. Some insist it's a structure charged with supernatural energy, or even a gateway to another realm. Leedsconen arrived in Florida in the early 1920s, heartbroken after being abandoned by his Agnes Scuffs, whom he called his Sweet 16. Consumed by grief and obsession, he began construction of what he initially called Rockgate Park, working alone, under the moonlight, hidden from the eyes of curious onlookers. Despite repeated offers of help, he never accepted assistance and was notoriously secretive about his methods. Trucks would deliver stone to his property, only to return empty, without anyone ever seeing the unloading process. Even children who spied on him claimed that he made the stones float into place, or that they saw them hover in the air without any ropes or cranes. The structure he created is breathtaking in its intricacy and strangeness. Towering walls, a sundial, a moon fountain, celestial sculptures, rocking chairs made of stone, and a massive gate that once rotated with a mere touch. Each element serves no practical purpose except to enchant, confuse, and beg the question, how did he do it? Coral Castle is not merely a sculpture garden. It is a coded message, an eternal riddle etched in stone. Some believe Leedsconen possessed lost ancient knowledge, perhaps even the secrets of the Egyptian pyramid builders. He spoke often of magnetism and electrical currents, and his pamphlets hinted at a deeper understanding of natural forces. He once claimed to have discovered the secrets of the pyramids, and hinted that the world misunderstood the true nature of gravity and energy. His small workshop on the premises still contains bizarre tools, pulleys, and tripods fashioned from auto parts and salvaged iron. Yet none of them seemed capable of lifting the stones he shaped with surgical precision. Even decades after his death, Coral Castle refuses to give up its secrets. Scientists, engineers, and skeptics have tried to replicate Lidskolin's techniques without success. Some chalk it up to an elaborate system of levers and patience. Others aren't so sure. The structure seems to hum with unseen energy. Compass needles spin erratically near certain stones. Visitors describe headaches, lightheadedness, or feelings of being watched. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain suddenly. And then there are the light's strange orbs, pale glows, and flashes seen floating above the castle late at night, sometimes captured on video, sometimes only witnessed by those daring enough to stay after dark. Locals whisper that Coral Castle sits at a convergence point of ley lines, mystical energy channels that crisscross the earth. These lines, some say, are the same ones that connect Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids, and other sacred sites. Whether by design or coincidence, Coral Castle's alignment with celestial bodies is too precise to ignore. The sundial tells accurate time. The North Star can be perfectly viewed through a narrow stone hole in one of the towers. Lidskolin, who only had a fourth-grade education, designed a space that seems to reflect a knowledge of the stars, physics, and energies far beyond his time or training. Then there's the romance, which hangs over the site like a ghost. Edward never stopped referring to Agnes as his Sweet 16, and every stone in the castle seems to echo that longing. The heart-shaped table, the throne room, the bedchambers, each carved with the tenderness of someone trying to resurrect a dream. Yet the love story, too, feels more like legend than fact. Agnes never visited. She never responded to his letters. It's as if Coral Castle is less a shrine to love than a spiritual echo chamber, amplifying sorrow into something eternal. Some paranormal investigators theorize that Lidskolin made contact with otherworldly forces, either intentionally or as a byproduct of his intense emotional focus. They suggest the castle acts as a beacon or portal, attracting spirits or energy beings. EVP sessions at the site have yielded eerie results, whispers, strange laughter, and, in one chilling recording, the phrase, "He knows." Today, Coral Castle stands as one of America's most baffling mysteries. Tour guides do their best to explain its history, to demystify its construction with discussions of simple machines and leverage. But the atmosphere defies explanation. It isn't just awe-inspiring, it's uncanny. You don't merely look at the stone. You feel them looking back. You don't just walk through its rooms. You pass through layers of emotion, of obsession, and perhaps of other realities bleeding into our own. Edward Lidskolin died in 1951. Quietly and without ever revealing his secrets, he left behind no blueprints, no confessions, no answers on the Coral Castle, and a lifetime of speculation. Some say he took the knowledge to his grave. Others insist he merely left us clues, etched into every curve and shadow of his creation, waiting for someone worthier, brave enough to uncover the truth. Whether you believe in science, love, or the paranormal, Coral Castle challenges everything you think you know about reality. It is at once a monument to heartbreak and a cosmic puzzle, a testament to one man's obsession, and perhaps a relic from a different dimension. Those who visit leave changed, haunted, not just by its mystery, but by the sense that something far greater is hidden within its silent stones, still watching, still waiting. Hidden among the modern sprawl of Orlando's vibrant streets and theme park glamour stands a relic from a grimmer past, the Old Orange County Jail. Built in 1927, the jail once held some of Florida's most dangerous criminals, as well as those who may have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. With its iron-barred cells, peeling paint, and oppressive silence, the building today feels more like a mausoleum than a detention center. Though it ceased operations decades ago, many believe the jail's darkest occupants never left. Voices echo in the empty corridors. Shadows move, where no living person walks, and visitors often speak of an invisible presence that refuses to rest. The architecture of the jail itself is stark and uninviting. A squat, concrete structure with long, narrow cell blocks and steel doors that groan when moved. The building housed both men and women, from petty thieves to murderers, many of whom spent years in overcrowded, poorly ventilated cells. Conditions were harsh. Stories have emerged of corruption, abuse, and even deaths that were swept under the rug. Some inmates died by suicide. Others were said to have perished under suspicious circumstances. Whispered rumors from former guards and inmates suggest that not all deaths were recorded properly, and some were intentionally forgotten. It is these stories of injustice, suffering, and violent ends that feed the belief that the jail is haunted. Paranormal activity has been reported consistently by former employees, investigators, and even skeptical tourists. Cold spots form abruptly in hallways where sunlight should provide warmth. Doors slam without cause. Disembodied screams and whispers have been heard echoing down the corridors, even when the building is entirely empty. In one particularly notorious hallway, footsteps often follow behind visitors perfectly in sync, but when they turn around, no one is there. One of the most frequently seen apparitions is a shadowy figure that drifts from cell to cell. Witnesses describe it as tall, faceless, and silent, moving without sound and vanishing as suddenly as it appears. Some believe this entity is the spirit of an inmate who was wrongfully convicted and died violently within the jail. Others think it may be something darker, an echo of pain and rage, given form by the energy trapped within the jail's walls. Paranormal investigators attempting to make contact with this presence have reported being scratched, pushed, or overwhelmed by a sense of dread so intense it drove them out of the building. There are also tales of a woman who appears in the old women's wing of the jail, described as pale, with long dark hair and a blank expression. She has been seen standing silently behind bars, watching visitors as they walk by. Some claim she has spoken in low tones, saying phrases like "I didn't do it" or "help me." Though no one has ever heard her full story, her identity remains a mystery. But she is often linked to a tragic case from the 1930s involving a young woman accused of poisoning her abusive husband. Though she maintained her innocence until the end, she was convicted and later died under suspicious circumstances. Whether her spirit remains out of sorrow, fear, or a desperate need to be believed, no one can say for certain. Inside the old solitary confinement cells, the atmosphere is especially oppressive. These tiny, pitch-black rooms once housed the most disruptive inmates, locking them away for days or even weeks at a time. Today, those who enter often describe sudden panic, disorientation, and nausea. Some claim to hear breathing just inches from their ear, or the sound of chains dragging across the floor. It's in these cells that investigators have captured some of the most compelling evidence: unexplainable thuds and faint voices pleading to be let out. The jail has since become a hotspot for ghost tours and paranormal teams, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the unexplained. Many leave with more than they bargained for. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain without warning, digital recorders pick up strange audio. Even seasoned investigators have reported being shaken by their experiences, describing the energy inside the building as heavy, hostile, and unforgiving. One chilling incident involved a visitor on a tour who became separated from the group. When she was found minutes later, she was sitting alone in an empty cell, visibly shaken, claiming a voice had called her name and led her there. She couldn't explain why she followed it, only that it sounded familiar. Even more unsettling, when her audio recorder was reviewed later, it captured a male voice, whispering her name twice, clear, deliberate, and impossible to explain. Some believe the spirits here are those of the wrongfully accused, their souls trapped by a desire for justice that never came. Others suspect that the jail has become a beacon for darker entities, drawn by the pain and despair that saturated its walls for nearly a century. Whatever the truth may be, the Old Orange County Jail is more than just a crumbling building from Florida. Past it. It's a place where time is fractured, where emotions linger, and where the line between the living and the dead grows disturbingly thin. Despite its chilling reputation, the jail continues to attract visitors drawn by curiosity, a desire to understand the unknown, or a need to connect with those long forgotten. Each creaking floorboard, each unexplained whisper, serves as a reminder that some places remember everything. The Old Orange County Jail stands, not just as a monument to punishment, but as a portal to the unresolved, echoing with voices that demand to be heard, even decades after their time ran out. The Tampa Bay Hotel, now a part of the University of Tampa and home to the Henry B. Plant Museum, was once the crown jewel of Florida's Gilded Age. Built in 1891 by railroad magnate Henry B. Plant, the hotel was a lavish palace of Moorish Revival architecture, sprawling grounds, and grand halls filled with European art and luxury. Presidents, dignitaries, and celebrities walked its long corridors, dined beneath its chandeliers, and marveled at its art. But beyond the intricate turrets and grand verandas lies another legacy, one not found in tourist brochures or history books. Whispers of ghostly sightings, spectral soldiers, and phantom footsteps have earned the former hotel a reputation as one of Tampa's most haunted locations. And in the shadow of its glory, some say the true fountain of youth may not offer eternal life, but eternal unrest. Though the hotel ceased operating as a resort in 1932, its legend lives on, not just through architecture and historical exhibits, but through the spirits said to roam its echoing halls. Visitors often speak of sudden cold pockets of frigid air that appear in rooms with no drafts or vents. Museum staff have reported hearing footsteps overhead when no one else is in the building. Doors open and close on their own, and the clinking of silverware or murmurs of unseen conversations are sometimes heard in rooms long abandoned. Among the most well-known apparitions is that of a Civil War-era soldier, described as tall, solemn, and clad in a faded Union uniform. He is most often seen standing near the grand staircase or in the museum's garden courtyard. Some have seen him disappear into walls, while others say he tips his cap before vanishing into thin air. His origins remain uncertain. The hotel was built decades after the Civil War, but some believe his presence may be linked to the site itself or to artifacts brought into the hotel during its heyday. Others theorize that the spirit arrived during the Spanish-American War, when the hotel served as the headquarters for the U.S. Army and a temporary staging ground for troops, including the legendary Rough Riders, led by Theodore Roosevelt. The soldier is not the only spirit who lingers. Former hotel guests are said to roam the upper floors, their laughter and voices drifting faintly through the walls. One room, now part of the museum's permanent display, features antique furniture, arranged exactly as it was in the 1890s. Visitors have reported seeing impressions in the bedding, as if someone had just been sitting there. A woman in a Victorian gown is sometimes glimpsed in the hallway outside the room, slowly turning a corner before fading into the air. There are also accounts from cleaning crews and museum staff who have felt hands brushing against them, only to turn and find no one there. On more than one occasion, employees working late have heard a piano playing faintly in the distance. When they investigated, the sound would stop abruptly, and the grand piano in the ballroom would be closed, untouched, and locked. One particularly chilling tale comes from a museum curator who was cataloging artifacts after hours. Alone in the exhibit room, she began hearing soft humming, low and melodic. Thinking a colleague had returned, she called out, but there was no response. The humming continued, now accompanied by the scent of lilacs and old-fashioned perfume. Once favored by ladies in the early 20th century, she followed the sound and smell to a display featuring a ballroom gown and parasol. As she reached for her clipboard, a sudden cold rush swept past her, and the humming stopped. She left the museum without finishing her work that evening and refused to return after dark. Over the years, the stories have drawn paranormal investigators from across the country. Ghost hunting teams have recorded electronic voice, phenomena whispers, and clipped phrases picked up on audio equipment in otherwise silent rooms. In one chilling instance, a recording caught a woman's voice saying, "You don't belong here." In another, the unmistakable sound of marching boots was captured, Even though the floor above was empty and closed off, some believe that the hotel's unique construction may amplify spiritual energy. The thick coquina walls, iron framework, and ornate copper domes could act as conductors, allowing residual energy to linger long after the living have departed. Others point to the emotionally charged events that occurred within the hotel: romantic affairs, political negotiations, sudden deaths, and wartime anxiety as the source of the building's supernatural residue. Despite, or perhaps because of its haunted reputation, the former Tampa Bay Hotel remains a magnet for history lovers and thrill seekers alike. Tours often include the ghost stories, alongside tales of architectural splendor and historical significance. Guides speak with reverence and caution when recounting personal experiences and guest testimonies. They don't claim to have all the answers. Instead, they present the building as it is, a place where the past lingers close to the surface, and where echoes of another era can still be heard if one listens closely enough. For some, the spirits are merely echoes repeating actions and memories long faded. For others, they are active presences, seeking acknowledgement, justice, or simply a sense of home. The Tampa Bay Hotel, with its silent halls and shimmering past, offers a rare intersection of beauty and mystery. And in the spaces where chandeliers once sparkled over lavish banquets, where soldiers once waited for orders that would change history, the veil between the living and the dead seems just a bit thinner. In the end, the hotel's allure lies not just in its architecture or its role in history, but in its ability to stir something deep in those who visit. Whether it's the thrill of a ghostly encounter, the ache of nostalgia, or the wonder of stepping into a forgotten world, the Tampa Bay Hotel continues to captivate. And somewhere within its shadowed corridors and moonlit balconies, the ghosts of the past may still be watching, waiting, and whispering secrets to those willing to listen. Perched along the rocky coastline of Stuart, Florida, the House of Refuge stands as the last remaining structure of its kind along the state's treacherous Atlantic shores. Built in 1876, this simple yet enduring building served as both a sanctuary and a beacon of hope for shipwreck survivors, and a grim reminder of the ocean's unforgiving nature. What was once a vital station for life-saving operations is now a museum, a preserved relic of maritime history. But the salty wind that blows through its windows carries more than just a scent of the sea. Whispers of tragedy, ghostly sightings, and unexplained phenomena suggest that the House of Refuge is far from silent. Many believe the spirits of those lost to the sea still linger here, bound to the coast they once tried to escape or protect. Originally established by the U.S. Life-Saving Service, the House of Refuge was one of 10 such outposts built to aid shipwrecked sailors along Florida's. It was a solitary post, manned by a keeper and his family, who lived in isolation and constant readiness. Their duty was simple yet harrowing: patrol the shoreline, watch for wrecks, and rescue those who might still be clinging to life after their ships were swallowed by the sea. Some nights passed in peace. Others were filled with cries for help, battered bodies washing ashore, and frantic efforts to save those dragged from the surf. Tragedy was a part of the job. Despite the bravery of the keepers, many lives were lost, some within sight of shore. Survivors who did make it to the House of Refuge often arrive, broken in spirit and body, many succumbing to injuries or illness soon after. Over time, the structure absorbed those memories. It became not only a place of refuge, but one of sorrow. Today, visitors to the House of Refuge report a feeling of deep unease, especially in the early morning or just after dusk. Guides speak of cold spots in rooms that should be warm, of sudden drops in temperature that defy the Florida heat. Phantom footsteps echo down the halls when the building is empty. Doors creak open without explanation, and the wooden floorboards groan under the weight of unseen feet. One of the most enduring legends involves strange lights seen out over the water, flickering orbs that move against the wind and waves. These lights are often mistaken for boats or signal flares, but when the Coast Guard investigates, nothing is found. Paranormal investigators suggest these are spiritual warnings, echoes of the flares once lit by keepers to guide sailors to shore, perhaps the restless souls of those who never made it to safety. There are stories of disembodied voices calling out in the wind, especially during storms. Some witnesses claim to hear cries for help carried through the crashing surf, only to find the shoreline empty. Others have reported hearing whispered prayers in languages long forgotten, desperate pleas from sailors lost over a century ago. The most frequently encountered spirit is believed to be that of a former keeper named Captain Henry Hudson, who served at the station in the late 1800s. Known for his dedication, Hudson perished during a fierce storm while trying to rescue the crew of a capsized schooner. He never returned from the sea, and many believe his soul remains forever watching the horizon. His figure has been seen pacing the tower, lantern in hand, eyes fixed on the black waters. Some staff have even felt a firm but invisible hand on their shoulder, as if urging them toward the window during high tide. Always during rough weather, in the upstairs bedroom, where survivors once lay recovering, strange occurrences are frequent. Blankets are found folded differently than they were left. Furniture is moved slightly overnight. Guests on guided tours. I felt sudden dizziness or waves of sorrow while standing in the room. One visitor claimed to see the faint outline of a man sitting on the bed, his clothes drenched and torn, his face gaunt and expressionless. The figure vanished when she blinked. Electronic voice phenomena, captured by investigators, have revealed unsettling whispers. One recording caught the words, "Still watching," in a hushed, gravelly tone. Another captured the sound of rhythmic tap in Morse code, which, when deciphered, spelled out the word danger. This has led some to believe that the spirits here aren't malicious, but guardians watching the coast for signs of trouble, doing the duty they were sworn to perform in life, even in death. One particularly chilling event was experienced by a night security guard who patrolled the grounds alone. As he made his way past the tower, he saw what appeared to be a man in old-fashioned clothing, standing near the cliff, gazing out to sea. Thinking it was a trespasser or lost tourist, he approached Tonley to have the figure vanish before his eyes. Seconds later, his radio crackled with static, followed by a voice he couldn't identify, repeating the word storm. That night, a sudden squall hit the coast, strong enough to capsize several small vessels. Local authorities credited early warnings with preventing fatalities. The guard, however, credits the man on the cliff. Despite its haunted reputation, the House of Refuge remains a place of respect, preservation, and reflection. Visitors are drawn not just by ghost stories, but by the deep sense of history and sacrifice embedded in its walls. For every eerie encounter, there is a tale of bravery and compassion of those who gave their lives to save others, and of those who perhaps never truly left. Whether the strange occurrences are echoes of trauma, residual energy, or the presence of spirits still walking their nightly patrols, the House of Refuge continues to guard the shoreline as it always has. And if you stand on the edge of the tower at night, listening closely as the waves crash and the wind whistles through the air, you might hear them, two voices from the past, still warning of danger, still watching over the sea. The Mary McLeod Bethune home in Daytona Beach is more than just a historic residence. It's a sanctuary of memory, legacy, and, according to many, spiritual presence. Once the home of one of the most influential African-American women in American history, this modest but powerful structure carries the echoes of a life dedicated to education, equality, and empowerment. But alongside its historical significance, the home is also steeped in tales of the supernatural, mysterious whispers, moving objects, and an unmistakable sense that Mary McLeod Bethune herself never truly left. Built in the early 20th century, the house served as Bethune's residence during her years as the founder and president of Bethune-Cookman University. She greeted civil rights leaders, dignitaries, and students within these walls, her home becoming a nexus for intellectual and social advancement in a time of deep racial segregation. The house still stands on the university campus today, preserved as a museum and shrine to her legacy. But as generations of students and visitors have come and gone, a recurring question has taken hold. Is her spirit still watching over the home she once cherished? Those who have spent time in the home speak of an atmosphere that goes beyond reverence. Some describe it as protective, almost maternal, as if the very walls radiate the strength and wisdom that Bethune embodied. Tour guides have reported feeling as though they read not alone when closing the museum for the evening. Shadows shift in empty rooms, footsteps echo in hallways, and lights flicker without any discernible cause. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the sound of whispered voices, often soft and unintelligible. These whispers are most often heard in the parlor, where Bethune hosted conversations that shaped educational policy and social progress. Visitors claim to feel the faint brushing of air near their ears, accompanied by murmured words that fade before they can be understood. Paranormal investigators who have explored the home with sensitive recording equipment have captured unexplained audio fragments of sentences, the faint rustle of fabric, and the low, steady hum of a woman's voice. Objects in the home have also been known to move without explanation. A well-known account comes from a former caretaker who witnessed a photo of Bethune shift slightly on the wall as she was cleaning. Startled, she returned the frame to its place, only for it to move again the next day. Other staff members have noted that books occasionally fall from the shelves, always the same few volumes ones that Bethune herself was known to read or reference during her time. Some believe this is her way of guiding visitors toward the knowledge and principles she held dear. There is also a profound emotional energy that many feel when stepping inside the home. More than one visitor has entered and been overcome with unexpected emotion, a feeling of being embraced, or the unshakable impression of being watched over. Unlike the cold dread that often accompanies ghost stories, the sensation here is warm and resolute. One visitor described it as standing in the presence of someone who still cares deeply about what happens in this space. A particularly famous story involves a group of students from the university who decided to tour the home at night, guided by curiosity and stories passed down through generations. As they entered the front room, the air grew inexplicably cool, and one student swears she saw a figure standing near the staircase, a woman in period dress, with her hands clasped calmly in front of her. When the students turned on the lights, the figure vanished. Rather than feeling fear, the students said they felt calm, like everything was going to be okay. Some interpreted it as Bethune's spirit reminding them of her continued presence and encouragement. The home has even been the site of spiritual experiences that transcend typical ghost stories. Mediums who have visited the property describe an overwhelming sense of purpose that lingers in every room. One psychic claimed to see Bethune seated at her desk, pen in hand, surrounded by the spiritual echoes of students who had come to her for guidance long after death. Whether symbolic or spectral, such visions reinforce the idea that this home serves as a bridge between past and present, between the living and those who continue to inspire from beyond. For many, the idea that Mary McLeod Bethune's spirit still walks the halls of her former home is not frightening, but comforting. It suggests that her work is not yet done, that her wisdom and strength remain embedded in the place she built with love and determination. Whether or not one believes in ghosts, the effect is undeniable. Visitors leave the home changed not just by the history they've learned, but by the lingering energy that seems to whisper from every corner. Keep going, keep building. The Mary McLeod Bethune home stands not only as a historical site, but as a sacred space one, where the boundaries between time and spirit blur, and where the legacy of a remarkable woman continues to live, breathe, and perhaps even speak. The Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral stands as a beacon of scientific achievement, innovation, and the enduring spirit of exploration. It is a place where humanity has reached for the stars, literally launching missions that have carried astronauts to the moon and beyond. Yet, beneath the awe-inspiring technology and towering rockets lies a quieter, more mysterious legacy. This historic site is also home to chilling ghost stories, an unexplained phenomena that persists in the shadows of its gleaming launch pads. Employees, engineers, and even visitors have whispered of strange occurrences, as though the very ground itself remembers the sacrifices made in the pursuit of space. Throughout its decades of operation, the Kennedy Space Center has witnessed incredible triumphs and heartbreaking losses. Among the most tragic were the Apollo 1 fire in 1967 and the Challenger disaster in 1986. The Apollo 1, Kruger Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee lost their lives in a horrific fire during a pre-launch test on Pad 34. Though the pad is now retired, those who visit the overgrown structure describe a heavy atmosphere, as if the air itself carries the weight of sorrow. Tour guides have reported hearing muffled voices or distant cries when standing alone near the pad, and on still nights, some swear they've seen brief flickers of light dancing around the remains of the launch structure. Security personnel who patrol the facility during the late-night shifts are among the most common sources of ghostly encounters. One guard, stationed near one of the older control buildings, reported seeing a shadowy figure pass down a corridor, only for it to vanish the moment he gave chase. Another employee recounted hearing the sound of footsteps echoing across the metal floors of a supposedly empty hangar, accompanied by the faint scent of burned plastic can odor that brings to mind electrical fires and scorched equipment. The Vehicle Assembly Building, one of the largest structures in the world by volume, is also the site of numerous unexplained events. Workers have described the unsettling feeling of being watched when walking the vast, echoing interior alone. Tools have reportedly moved on their own, fallen from secured shelves, or disappearing altogether, only to be found later in odd locations. While skeptics attribute this to drafts or human error, some engineers believe that these occurrences may be something else, a lingering presence from someone who never left their post. Former NASA staff who worked during the shuttle era tell stories passed quietly among colleagues. Tales of figures seen walking along the catwalks high above the assembly floors. These apparitions are said to wear vintage flight suits, their faces obscured by shadows or helmets. They never speak, never turn to look, but they appear with such clarity that some employees have mistaken them for fellow workers. They vanish before the eyes of disbelieving witnesses. Launch Complex 39A and 39B, which have supported missions from Apollo to SpaceX, are particularly active in terms of paranormal reports. Despite modern renovations and tight security, some technicians report sudden cold spots while inspecting the structures, even under the harsh Florida sun. Others claim to hear murmured conversations in empty control rooms or feel an invisible hand brush their shoulder. One former pad technician recounted a chilling experience when he was working a solo shift in the early 2000s. While walking the gantry, he heard what sounded like someone sobbing, echoing through the steel beams. When he searched for the source, he found no one, but later learned it was the anniversary of the Challenger disaster. The memory of Challenger haunts the entire facility. Launched from Pad 39B, the shuttle exploded just 73 seconds into its flight, killing all 7 astronauts on. In the years since, staff have reported seeing lights flickering inexplicably in nearby buildings and feeling overwhelming waves of sadness near the memorial site. One engineer who had worked on shuttle programs for decades described waking up in the break room late at night to the distinct sound of mission control, chatter only, to realize the monitors were off and the room was dark. He insisted he recognized the voices of crew members he once knew. Visitors to the Kennedy Space Centers. Public areas have also had strange encounters. Some tourists claim to have felt chills while viewing certain exhibits, particularly those honoring fallen astronauts. Others have reported catching fleeting glimpses of figures in the reflection of glass displays, only to turn and find no one there. While the exhibits aim to commemorate the past, it's as though something from that past occasionally reaches forward into the present. Mediums and paranormal researchers who have quietly investigated the site suggest that the energy of the Space Center is unlike any other. It is a place charged with intense emotion, pride, ambition, grief, and sacrifice. Unlike typical hauntings tied to a single location or traumatic event, the spirits here seem to be tethered to the cause itself. The pursuit of discovery, the willingness to risk everything for the sake of knowledge. These ghosts, they say, are not lost souls, but guardians, watchful presences who continue to walk among the rockets and control panels, ensuring that their legacy of courage endures. Whether one believes in the supernatural or not, the stories surrounding the Kennedy Space Center speak to something profound. In this place, where the Earth meets the stars, where humanity has both soared and fallen. The past is never far away. It clings to the launch towers, echoes through the corridors, and lingers in the air like a silent prayer. The spirits of those who died in the name of exploration may not be gone. They may simply be waiting for the next countdown, the next launch, the next moment when history once again defies gravity. Tucked away in the serene hills of Lake Wales, Florida, the Boctow Gardens offer visitors a lush, peaceful escape from the modern world. With acres of manicured lawns, rare foliage, and a stunning singing tower rising 205 feet into the sky, it's a place where time seems to stand still. Originally conceived as a sanctuary for birds and people alike, this National Historic Landmark is a place of beauty, tranquility and, according to many, an unsettling undercurrent of the supernatural. At the heart of the gardens stands the majestic Bok Tower, a neo-Gothic and Art Deco masterpiece built in 1929 by Edward W. Bok as a gift of gratitude to the American people. The tower houses a 60-bell carillon that still rings out haunting melodies daily, operated by a carillonneur from high within the tower's inner sanctum. While these melodies are part of the tower's allure, many have claimed to hear the bells ringing late at night, long after the tower has been locked and the grounds emptied. Groundskeepers and local residents speak in hushed tones of these spectral concerts, where the music floats eerily over the landscape under moonlight, seemingly played by unseen hands. Some believe these mysterious recitals may be connected to Bok himself. A philanthropist, editor, and immigrant, Edward Bok devoted his life to cultivating harmony both in nature and in the human spirit. He is buried at the base of the tower in a simple grave. Visitors often report a strange energy in the area surrounding his resting place. Some claim they feel a sudden wave of calm wash over them. Others describe an overwhelming sense of being watched not malevolently, but with curiosity. On rare occasions, people have seen a shadowy figure in formal dress, standing silently by the grave, before vanishing without a trace. But it's not just the tower that has a ghostly reputation. The winding trails of the gardens are known to harbor their own secrets. Many have heard the crunch of footsteps following them along the gravel paths, only to turn and find no one behind them. Others speak of fleeting glimpses, a silhouette passing behind a tree, a flicker of white in their peripheral vision. On several occasions, guests have approached staff to ask about the woman in the gardens, believing her to be a costumed performer. Described as wearing a flowing white gown, she is most frequently seen by the reflection pool or near the flowering community. Yet the staff insists there are no actors, no reenactments, and no explanation. The identity of this wandering woman is the subject of much speculation. Some say she is the ghost of a young woman who died on the property in the early 20th century, long before the gardens were established. A story often told among the staff involves a woman who was the daughter of one of the early citrus barons, whose land would later become part of the garden. According to legend, she disappeared while walking through the orange groves. Her body never recovered. Her grief-stricken family believed she had drowned in a nearby sinkhole, but others whispered that she had vanished into the forest under strange and possibly supernatural circumstances. Over the years, other unexplained phenomena have added layers to the garden's haunting reputation. Electrical equipment used for maintenance sometimes malfunctions near the tower, only to begin working again once removed from the immediate area. Tourists report photos taken inside the gardens, turning up with odd distortions, misty shapes, orbs, and occasionally the pale face of a figure that wasn't there at the time the photo was taken. One longtime volunteer, who asked not to be named, recalls an incident that left her deeply unsettled. While trimming hedges near the peace lantern, she felt a strong gust of wind, despite the air being still moments before. She turned to see a man in early 20th century attire, standing several feet away, gazing solemnly at the tower. As she blinked, he vanished, leaving only the faint scent of old-fashioned cologne in the air. It was like watching time peel away, she later said. For a moment, I wasn't in 2023. I was somewhere else entirely. Despite the reports, Bok Tower Gardens maintains a reputation as a place of peace and inspiration. Many visitors leave uplifted, filled with a sense of calm and renewal. Yet for those sensitive to the energy of a place, there's no denying that the gardens resonate with something deeper, something beyond the veil of the everyday. Whether it's the powerful legacy of Edward Bach, the echo of past lives, or the natural magic of the land itself, the garden seems to hum with quiet mysteries. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have, over the years, sought permission to explore the grounds after dark, with mixed results. Some claim to have captured EVP recordings of faint voices and music, while others experience nothing unusual. But the stories persist. The music continues to ring out when no one is around. The woman in white continues her solitary walks through the community, and the spirits, whoever they may be, remain as much a part of the gardens as the flowers, the tower, and the sky. The Coral Gables Merrick House, nestled in the heart of one of Florida's most picturesque cities, is far more than just a preserved historical site. Built in the early 1900s by George E. the visionary founder of Coral Gables, the home stands as a proud monument to the city's origins. But beneath its Mediterranean revival charm and elegant architecture lies something more elusive, something that many say still lingers in the quiet corners and echoing halls of the house. Visitors and staff alike have reported chilling experiences that suggest the presence of Merrick himself, unwilling or unable to leave the legacy he built behind. George Merrick was a dreamer and a doer. He imagined a city that would combine beauty, order, and inspiration from Spanish colonial design. And through grit and determination, he made that dream a reality. Coral Gables blossomed under his guidance, with its arched doorways, sprawling banyan trees, and distinctive terracotta roofs. His house became the nerve center of this development, a place of meetings, plans, and family life. But the prosperity didn't last. Like so many, Merrick was devastated by the 1929 stock market crash. Financial ruin followed, and though he continued to work and write, the golden age of his vision dimmed. Perhaps that's why some say his spirit has never left. Tour guides and caretakers of the Merrick House have long whispered about the strange sensations that overcome them late in the day. It starts subtle, lights flickering even when the wiring has been inspected. The sound of footsteps pacing just overhead when the house is supposedly empty, and the occasional door that swings open without a draft. More than one worker has reported the distinct scent of cigar smoke wafting through the air, despite no one smoking on the premises. Some accounts go beyond mere suggestion. A few visitors claim to have seen a tall figure in period clothing, slowly walking the upstairs hallway, or standing at the window that once overlooked Merrick's expanding city. He never speaks, never interacts, but vanishes the moment you blink or turn away. Others say he's been spotted sitting in what was once his study, hands folded, eyes fixed on the far wall, as though still wrestling with unfinished dreams. One of the eeriest stories involves a local historian who spent the night in the house as part of a city-sponsored preservation project. Just past midnight, he was jolted awake by the distinct sound of a man's voice, soft, low, and unintelligible. It seemed to come from the corner of the room, near an antique writing desk that once belonged to Merrick. He turned on his flashlight, but there was no one there. As he got up to investigate, the room suddenly turned icy cold, and the voice stopped. In the silence that followed, he claimed he felt an overwhelming sense of sadness, as if the walls themselves were grieving. Some believe Merrick's ghost is not malevolent but protective. In fact, many describe his spectral presence as gentle, watchful, and echo of a man still trying to safeguard the city he built. During Hurricane Andrew in 1992, when much of the surrounding area sustained severe damage, the Merrick House miraculously remained largely unscathed. Locals like to say George was watching over it, unwilling to let go of the home that symbolized everything he once achieved. Paranormal investigators have conducted sessions inside the house and claim to have recorded disembodied voices, strange electromagnetic readings, and even inexplicable shadows moving through the room. One investigator, using EVP equipment, allegedly captured a voice, saying simply, "This is mine." When asked who was speaking, the voice responded, "George." Even skeptics admit that there is an energy in the Merrick House that is hard to ignore. The air feels heavier in certain rooms. Time seems to stretch. In the quietest moments, And for those who are particularly sensitive, the feeling of being watched is almost impossible to shake. But the most touching experiences come from guests who describe feeling a strange sense of comfort inside the house, like being wrapped in a memory. Some have described an unexplained warmth while standing in Merrick's bedroom, or the sensation of a hand gently touching their shoulder during a tour. One visitor, a descendant of a Coral Gables founding family, burst into tears upon stepping into the home's front hall, saying she felt welcomed home by something she couldn't explain. Whether George Merrick truly haunts his former residence, or whether the home simply holds the emotional weight of a life's ambition, one thing is certain: the Merrick House continues to capture the imagination of all who enter. It stands not just as a museum or a historical landmark, but as a living monument to a man whose spirit refuses to be forgotten. In the golden afternoon light that filters through the arched windows, it's easy to imagine Merrick himself stepping down the grand staircase, a blueprint in hand, his mind already dreaming of the next street to name or the next building to design. And if you happen to catch a glimpse of a shadow just beyond the doorway, or hear the soft tap of footsteps behind you when no one's there, you may want to pause and offer a quiet thank you for vision, for beauty, and perhaps for still watching over the city he loved so dearly. The Stranahan House in Fort Lauderdale stands as one of the oldest and most enduring structures in Broward County. Built in 1901 by Frank Stranahan, the city's founding father, the home was originally a trading post and ferry stop, before becoming the private residence of Frank and his wife, Ivy Julia Cromartie. What remains today is not only a beautifully preserved slice of South Florida history, but also one of the most haunted sites in the region. Visitors often say the past clings to the walls of the Stranahan House, and that the spirits of the original owners have never left. Frank Stranahan was a pioneer, a businessman, and an ambitious developer with grand visions for the uncharted swampland. Ivy, the town's first schoolteacher, was known for her intelligence and community activism. Together, they formed a powerful and respected couple who helped lay the groundwork for what the city is today. But their story is not without tragedy, and many believe that the sorrow etched into the home's history is what keeps the spirits anchored there. In the late 1920s, the Florida land boom came crashing down. Frank, who had invested heavily in real estate, suffered severe financial losses, coupled with a growing sense of hopelessness and a battle with depression. His mental state began to decline rapidly. On a rainy morning in 1929, Frank walked out onto the dock in front of his beloved home and tied a heavy iron gate around his neck. He then stepped into the New River and drowned himself. The act shocked the community, and many say that Frank's tormented soul never truly found peace. Almost immediately after his death, strange phenomena began occurring inside the Stranahan house. Guests and residents reported flickering lights, slamming doors, and disembodied whispers echoing through the hallways. Over time, the house developed a reputation as a place where the veil between the living and the dead had grown dangerously thin. Cold spots are one of the most commonly reported occurrences. Even in the sweltering heat of a South Florida summer, certain corners of the house remain unnaturally chilly. Visitors frequently report a sudden drop in temperature, especially near the old stairwell where Ivy once stood for hours, waiting for her husband to return on the day he died. Many believe her spirit still waits there, suspended in that moment of shock and grief. Apparitions have been seen throughout the house. The most frequently encountered is Frank himself, often appearing near the river-facing windows, his eyes vacant, his presence heavy with sorrow. He's also been seen walking the hallway outside what used to be his office, vanishing into thin air when approached. Others have reported seeing Ivy, dressed in white, gliding silently across the parlor. Her appearance is usually accompanied by the scent of lavender, her favorite perfume. There are other ghosts, too, former boarders, servants, and even Seminole traders who once passed through the building seem to make their presence known. Some nights, faint music drifts through the house, as though a forgotten piano is being played by invisible hands. Other times, objects move on their own. Tour guides have watched books slide off shelves without explanation. Rocking chairs sway with no breeze, and light fixtures swing gently, as though someone has just passed beneath them. One well-documented incident occurred during a nighttime historical tour. A group of visitors was gathered in the dining room when a chandelier began to shake violently above their heads. No one was near it, and there was no sign of an earthquake or air disturbance. As the guests watched in stunned silence, a candlestick on the mantel tipped over and clattered to the floor. Several members of the tour refused to return to the house again. Paranormal investigators have explored the Stranahan house many times, capturing EVP's electronic voice phenomena containing whispers, cries, and what some claim are faint utterances of Ivy's name. Photos taken inside the home occasionally reveal misty shapes or strange orbs of light, particularly in the upstairs bedrooms. One investigator even claimed to have felt a pair of invisible hands pressed down on his shoulders, freezing him in place near the stairwell. Despite the ghostly activity, the Stranahan house is not considered an evil or malevolent place. Most who experience something paranormal report a profound sense of sadness or nostalgia, as though the house itself is mourning a life that passed too quickly. The spirits that remain are not angry. They are simply lingering echoes of lives once deeply connected to this place. Today, the house functions as a museum and cultural landmark. Visitors walk the same wooden floors where pioneers once tread, admiring antique furniture, family photographs, and exhibits about early Fort Lauderdale history. But it's the atmosphere that stays with people long after they leave. There's an undeniable sense that the walls have witnessed more than they let on. That somewhere in the soft creak of a floorboard or the rustle of curtains lies a whisper from the past. The Stranahan house remains a portal to another time, a time of ambition, heartbreak, and unbreakable spirit. The ghosts of Frank and Ivy, and perhaps others too, seem bound to it, not out of vengeance, but out of love. Love for each other, for their city, and for a home that meant more to them than the world ever knew. And there you have it, to 20 of the most haunted places in Florida, each with its own chilling history and restless spirits waiting in the shadows. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, these stories remind us how the past never truly dies. It lingers, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in shadows, and sometimes in full view. If you enjoyed this journey into Florida's haunted heart, don't forget to hit that like button, share your own ghost stories in the comments below, and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales every week. And remember, when you explore the unknown, be respectful, be brave, and always watch your back. Now, if you dare to venture into the eerie and mysterious, I invite you to test your bravery with our other spine-chilling videos, like the one you've been watching. For a lighter journey into the unknown, watch this video instead. But for now, as the sun sets and the shadows grow longer, remember the spirits of Florida's past are never far behind. Thanks for watching.